So about teacher evaluation, I echo your concerns and thoughts. Teachers, we were asleep at the wheel. We allowed non-teachers to begin to dictate what we should be doing in schools. So now this has gotten so far, it's to the point where it has become publicly accepted that the reason students aren't learning is because we have bad teachers, and then the conversation continues if we just get rid of bad teachers. So the New Millennium and several other groups brought up that one of the problems with teacher evaluation is it's viewed as a gotcha. It is. That's, in many places, that's exactly what's going on. Then people say, oh, well, it doesn't help improve instruction. Right, because that's not what you're asking us to focus on. When you're saying, oh, we're going to get rid of bad teachers, that does not motivate anyone to go to your principal and say, you know what, there's an area that I would really like to grow in. It's more like, ooh, let's cover that up. Maybe they won't notice that I have that deficit. So we need to turn it to opening it up. Our current evaluation system might recognize who's the lowest, but I'm going to tell you as a good teacher, it doesn't do anything for me. So we need to develop an evaluation system that no matter where you are on the spectrum, you continue to learn and grow. So it's a theoretical idea of what we want, and it's actually looking at a model I kind of brought up, which is what we do with students, which is focusing on formative assessment. So how do we get feedback? How do we change the idea of evaluation? We're even looking at maybe trying to change the name, because evaluation sounds like a judgment that is done instead of the idea that we're all on a spectrum and we all need to continue to learn and grow. We're also looking at allowing teachers to select ideas to work on as a team, and they would both look at individual, how it affected my classroom, but as a collective, how did it affect all of our students, so that they could make some recommendations and even putting forward some action research types of things. So it's still kind of out there in the theoretical idea, but I hope to be sharing with you guys maybe in the next year or two some pretty cutting edge stuff that we're doing in teacher evaluation.
What we're going to do is we're going to invest in the teachers first. So what we did is invested that SIG money into training and supporting and paying for teachers in our lowest performing schools to become nationally board certified teachers. Right now I can tell you that in San Francisco, which already has a sizable cadre of nationally board certified teachers, it is in our lowest performing, which won't be lowest performing for very much longer, lowest performing schools that we now have the greatest number of nationally board certified teachers. We're about to announce another 30 that have been nationally board certified. Now, what has that done for us? You heard our speakers in the previous panel talk about teacher empowerment. So in these schools, we now have teachers who have become nationally board certified teachers who are taking on additional responsibilities, not because they're violating their contract, but because they are mentoring their colleagues and helping their colleagues on the path to be nationally board certified teachers. So guess what they're doing? They're looking at student performance data, they're looking at teacher practice, they're looking at the standards and how they're implemented. They're in each other's classrooms observing and giving each other feedback. There's no administrator involved, there's no union involved. It's colleague to colleague strengthening the profession.
I think we've created kind of this insular culture where we're afraid to talk about new ideas because we're afraid that it's going to be taken advantage of. And that the implementation of what are sometimes great ideas that we're sometimes just afraid so we become in this defensive kind of almost victim mentality, but we're going to fight it out, we're going to duke it out with you, and I certainly have done that many times. So kind of how we talk about it is really important because it's how we then feel safe to take those risks and to talk about things like peer assistance and peer review. Because when we talk to our members about that kind of thing, or differentiated pay, or any of those issues that aren't, when we don't use the red flag like merit pay or pay for performance or those kinds of things, our members are dying on the vine. They are hungry for this. Not just our new teachers, our veteran teachers are dying. Some of them have just become resigned. They close their door and they're going to do what they're going to do, and as long as everybody leaves them alone, they're fine. And we need to reach out to those teachers. But there are many that are just hungry for something that's meaningful. And for us, we developed some principles around teacher evaluation, just recently adopted by our state council. The first one is the primary reason for a good teacher evaluation system is to improve your practice and raise student achievement. That's number one. And of course, it has to be bargained. That's kind of one of the things. But it has to also involve teacher input. It has to create a safe environment.
Part of my challenge is that, I will wake up one day and say, it ought to be terribly prescriptive. We ought to actually figure out how to have the 4 categories of effectiveness. And then you sort of wake up for a second and realize that one size wouldn't fit all. There are districts that have their systems in place that actually have either culturally or the dynamics with their labor and management that they don't need as much prescription. So the idea is, and you can't be prescriptive. The reference was made to Senator Steinberg's bill. I mean, that was, I think, again, and I agree with Shannon on this, it was very prescriptive in that it would try to assign ratios on how you staff a school. And I don't know that you can be that sort of dogmatic about an approach when you're dealing with people and human capital and, more importantly, children. So the challenge is sort of how do you get something that you can balance that is open and available to districts so they can fill in what it is that they need. And so that's where we are with this bill. Interestingly enough, in our stakeholder processes that we've been having for about a year and a half on sort of what the bill ought to be and the criteria and the multiple observations, all that stuff, that part is the easy part. No one has said, oh gosh, that's terribly prescriptive or it's not prescriptive enough. The hard part is, well, how does that relate to the personnel questions that will arise as a result of a poor evaluation? The hard part is, should we bargain that or shouldn't we bargain that? That's sort of where we get hung up, and it relates completely to the high-stake decision making.